I am here for Wellness Wednesday, and I wanted to talk about something that I think a lot of people have a huge misunderstanding and a lot of frustration around, and that is iron deficiency. It is not just iron deficiency. There's a lot more to it than just the fact that you're either losing blood. For women, a lot is menses, or you have some bone marrow suppression, or you are not absorbing iron from your food. There's a lot of reasons. I'm trying to make this work, and it is. I'm sorry if I'm making somebody dizzy or sick with all this moving around. Okay. And people who, you end up taking iron, and it is kind of a hard supplement for you to take, for you to digest, for you to tolerate. It causes a lot of side effects, a lot of belly pain, a lot of constipation, that kind of stuff. And then you find that your iron, really hasn't budged. Like you went through all of this stuff, and then your iron really hasn't budged. So I wanted to kind of talk to you about, iron isn't just iron, and it doesn't always mean that you need more. So if you've been told that you have iron deficiency anemia, I want you to understand that there's a lot of moving parts, and it's not just taking more. It may be, you'll find that it might just be inaccessible to your cells, for good reason, but it might be inaccessible to your cells. So, I really can't tell you how many times people have told me how they're anemic or they have low iron, and they immediately are prescribed a supplement or an infusion, and they feel no better, and sometimes they feel worse. Or usually it's those people who have maybe been told that their blood is a little low, that they are a little bit anemic, and then they decide to take these supplements, and then they start feeling worse. So just because your iron looks low on paper doesn't mean that your body needs more iron. And just because your ferritin looks normal, it doesn't mean that you have enough. And ferritin is the storage protein. It's how iron is stored. So it's basically your warehouse. Your body stores iron there until it's needed to make red blood cells, or to fuel your mitochondria. And so when we talk about ferritin being normal, that only tells us what's in storage. It doesn't tell us what's actually being used or what's available to the cell to be used. So here's the thing. When the body is dealing with inflammation, and one thing, if I could get one thing across today, is that most people are dealing with inflammation for a lot of different reasons, but most people are dealing with inflammation. Could be from gut issues, might be from, that you had an infection and your immune system never turned down. So your immune is kind of revved up. Might even be chronic stress. It could also be because you're not able to balance your blood sugars. There's that you lead a stressful life, or there's physical stress. So whenever you have this inflammation from whatever reason, it releases a hormone called hepcidin. And if you can't tell, there is someone at my door right now. So anyway, and hepcidin's job is to lock away iron in those ferritin hiding sites. I might have to shoot some dogs. Oh, and he's coming here. Hold on. I'll be right back. No, ma'am. No, ma'am. No, ma'am. You stop. 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 And she's the sweetest dog ever, but I don't know why. She apparently doesn't, she's very territorial. She's a cane corso, so that's what you get. But she's the sweetest thing ever, and it just makes me a little crazy when she barks like that. But anyway, so when you have inflammation from whatever reason, okay, gut leaking, hidden infections, chronic stress, poor blood sugar balancing, any of it, all of it, okay? it can release a hormone called hepcidin. And hepcidin's job is to lock away iron into those ferritin storage sites, like the liver or your macrophages, which is a type of white blood cell, to keep it out of reach for things like bacteria and viruses that like to feed on it. So it's a protective mode to keep your iron in storage form. Okay, so your body knows what to do, and then you're taking this supplement, so more is just getting stored, and it's never actually making it to your cells. So do you kind of see why taking a supplement might not be the right first thing to do, and how you kind of got to back up the steps a little bit, and you have to maybe help to identify where that inflammation is coming from before you actually start to treat it. So that means that the iron is there, but it's just not available to your cells. So you can have normal or even high ferritin, but still have the classic signs of low iron: fatigue, brain fog, hair loss, feeling cold, craving ice. That's called a pica. And essentially you crave ice and you chomp on ice. That's an indication that you have iron deficiency. So here's the interesting part. Even if your lab doesn't test iron, you don't get they're not actually giving you a result on your labs that say iron, we still get clues about whether you have iron deficiency or whether your iron levels might be low. One of the places that we look is at your red blood, or at your CBC. And in your CBC, we look at 3 kinds of blood cells. We look at white blood cells, red blood cells, and platelets. And on the red blood cells, if we do a differential, and that differential just is differentiating the different types of white blood cells, the different types of red blood cells. So it kills me when you're trying to figure out some issue that you have going on, or you're trying to explain some symptoms that you have going on, and you get a CBC with no differential, because that cuts you off at the knees. That really takes away all of, or almost all of, the beneficial information. So your red blood cell indices tell us how big your cells are, how uniform in size they are, what color they are. They tell us how much hemoglobin is on there. And so it gives us clues about, whether you might be iron deficient or not. If your red blood cells, there's one of the red blood cell indices called an RDW, which tells us how uniform in size they are. So this can you can actually see this on your labs for quite a while, even after you've started to replenish, after you've started to get better from that iron deficiency anemia, if you're treating it, because it is your bone marrow pushing out all of these cells, maybe before they're completely ready. So they're not all uniform in size. Some are small, some are big, some are medium sized. And so we get clues about whether you have an iron deficiency anemia by looking at these red blood cell indices. This tells us that your body isn't getting iron into the red blood cells where it belongs. And that's how we can tell that your iron might be low, not just it's just stuck. So the other thing that we can tell, we also get some clues from your CBC about inflammation as well. Your white count can tell us that, and the differential on that white count tells us all the different types of cells that you have. It can point to the fact that even if your white blood cells are normal on your lab, the types of white blood cells tell us about whether you're dealing with something chronic. Maybe you have some parasites. Maybe you have this kind of low-grade infection or inflammation instead of an infection. So it really does tell us a good amount of information, and it gives us some clues and some signs about if you have that inflammation. There's testing that I do that gives us better clues about where that inflammation might be coming from. But getting a good history is another place to kind of to kind of get an idea. If you've got a lot of GI symptoms, if you're constipated, bloated, reflux, heartburn, you eat protein, it feels like it gets stuck in your gut, then it's probably coming from your gut. You probably have a gut issue. So here's what most people don't realize is that iron isn't just one number. It really is kind of a whole process to get iron into the cell. And so it starts by getting iron in your diet. So you have to have a diet that is, that is varied, that has a good iron source. Sometimes people who are low in iron, in addition to supplementing, they'll also be told to cook in some cast iron skillets, that a little bit of that iron flakes off and it gets into the body and you absorb it that way. But you have to have it in your diet. Then you have to absorb it out of what you eat. So your gut has to be healthy so that you can absorb it. And then it gets transported through the blood and it gets stored in ferritin. And then finally released and used inside of your cells to make energy. And if any one of these things gets interrupted, so you can see how there's a lot of things that need to go right and just a few things that if they go wrong, then you're going to have some difficulty replenishing that iron and getting your iron up. So, low stomach acid, inflammation, missing nutrients, gut issues, or if your cells can't get the iron that they need, no matter how much you take in, then they're going to be deficient. So let's break it down. Getting it in your diet starts what's on your plate. The best and the most, or the best absorbed form of iron is heme iron. Heme just means blood, and it's found in grass-fed beef, liver, chicken, fish. You can also get it from plants like spinach or beans, but they have the non-heme iron, and it's really harder not only for your body to absorb it, but for your body to process it so that it can be used in the cells. That's where you need to, if you're taking iron, you need to be taking vitamin C. And if you're just trying to increase the iron in your diet, one of the best ways or sources of vitamin C is going to be bell peppers and strawberries. Yes, you can take citrus. It also has vitamin C in there, but bell peppers is one of the best forms or the best sources of vitamin C. And you're going to want to take your iron with food because it can be very hard on the stomach. Or if you're just getting it through your food, then certainly throw some bell peppers and some strawberries in there. All right, absorbing it in the gut. So you can eat plenty of iron and still not absorb it if your digestion isn't right. So low stomach acid, gut inflammation, conditions like small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, celiac disease, block absorption. And you need a good digestive rhythm, like healthy stomach acid, to free iron from the food and to move it into the bloodstream or to absorb it from a supplement. So if you're using acid blockers, constantly eating on the go, that step alone can really interfere with how you're absorbing your food. You really need to be in that rest and digest mode in order to actually digest and absorb. So transporting it through the blood. So once iron is absorbed, it hops on a protein called transferrin, and it travels through the bloodstream. And then here's where some mineral cofactors really make a difference. And sometimes you're not going to be able to get your iron up because you've got these huge mineral deficiencies. And so until you recognize those and treat those, your iron is going to stay in storage form. So copper and zinc help that taxi, that taxi that carries iron through the blood. It helps it to work properly. And if you're deficient in those minerals, iron has trouble reaching its destination. So you can be getting plenty of iron in, you can be absorbing it, but you're deficient in copper and zinc, and you'll still have that same tired, foggy feeling even though you're taking supplements because they're not getting to where they need to go. Having it in your body is not enough. It needs to be in your cells. Ferritin, so storing it safely in ferritin, that's a step. Ferritin is your storage warehouse. We talked about that. Normally it's balanced. Iron goes in and comes out as needed. But if your body senses infection, inflammation, stress, it locks it away because it doesn't know why it's being stressed or it has this inflammatory process going on or infection going on. But it assumes that it is from bacteria or viruses that actually feed off of iron. And so it kind of keeps it in the storage form so that it keeps those bacteria and viruses from using it. So when your ferritin is high and you're still tired, that tells me that you're stuck in protection mode, that your body is doing a good job of protecting you, that there is inflammation somewhere and we need to go looking for it. So step 5, releasing it to your cells. This is where iron does its real job, fueling your mitochondria to make ATP, your body's energy currency. But that can't happen, again, from inflammation, missing cofactors. Here's where copper and vitamin A are important. Poor gut health, blocking the release. That's why so many people take iron and still feel exhausted. Iron never gets to the cell. It's trapped upstream. All they get is constipated because it's sitting in the gut instead of being absorbed and used. So when you think about iron, don't just think add more. I want you to think about that there's a process, and where in this process might I be having problems? If you're not digesting well, you need to start there. If your inflammation is high, you need to figure out where that's coming from. Usually it's the gut. If your minerals are off, you need to restore balance. So you need to work on your diet, or you need to work on your absorption. Again, that's why I say so many times that health really starts in the gut, because that's foundational. And you can see here that there's 3 different things that we are pointing to for iron deficiency that are actually coming from the gut. So when you repair the flow, your body actually unlocks the iron and the energy starts to come back online. And that's when your fatigue lifts, your hair starts to thicken, and you really feel like yourself again. So the next time someone says you just need iron, you know that that isn't the whole story. It's not about forcing more in. It's making sure that yes, you do have some in your diet, but you're also absorbing it, that it's getting transported, and that it's getting released and pushed into the cell so that it can do its work. That's when you're really going to be starting to feel better. So if you've been told that your iron is fine, but you still feel exhausted, or you're wondering why your supplements aren't working, drop iron in the comments and I'll send you my guide that explains how to tell if your iron is stuck instead of low.